ranges, and their hit rate was pretty good, up to 60-70% on some occasions.
But when these same troops fought in a battle, their performance was found to be very different. 1,000 men firing at even closer range should have been hitting more than 500 of the enemy with each volley. The actual figure is remarkable. They managed to kill 3. Not 300, 3. If the armies of the Napoleonic era had really wanted to kill each other, there was a far simpler and faster way of doing it. The longbow could loose off over 12 shots a minute with deadly accuracy. A musket could fire 2 or 3 shots a minute and would jam frequently. But, of course, it was loud, smoky and scary. Back in Arkansas, Lieutenant Colonel Grossman thinks that throughout history, infantrymen have managed to do their duty but still missed the enemy by a fraction.
Do you understand that firing at those targets down there, a 1/16 of an inch variance in my barrel is the difference between a hit and a miss? An 1/8 of an inch, a 1/16 of an inch variance is the difference between a hit and a miss. And so it is so easy to fire over their heads.
But surely, I'm standing next to you in our line of men, and if I think you're not shooting straight, aren't I going to be really pissed off with you? And
well, you're not paying much attention to me.
He also believes there's historical evidence which shows that many soldiers never fired at all.
In the American Civil War, in the Battle of Gettysburg, of the tens and tens of thousands of weapons that were collected, the majority were loaded. And of those, over half had multiple loads in the barrel. One with 23 loads all the way up the barrel. Do you understand? A man stood there in combat with bullets whizzing around his head. He loaded the weapon. He brought it up. He didn't fire. He brought it down. He loaded it again, and he did that 23 times.
He didn't want his fellows to think he wasn't shooting, but
Maybe.
he was the opposite of a coward.
Maybe.
Because he was standing there in the line.
Yeah. There has to be something deep, primal, innate, almost virtually universal happening. And I think what we're running into is the need to participate, clashing with the resistance to killing.
What Grossman is saying is that the men of our grandparents' generation who went to France to fight the Nazis wanted to kill the enemy. They just found that they couldn't.
Let's say we're in a trench, or we're on a beachhead in Normandy, or we're going into the Battle of the Bulge, or whatever. And there are 2 guys in my company of 100 people who are doing all the killing. What's everybody else doing if they're not getting...
Well, first off, let's say that 15 are firing. Let's say 15 out of 100. Let's take Marshall's data. Say 15 out of 100 are firing, maybe 20 out of 100 are firing. Maybe 2 are really firing effectively, aggressively, taking it to the enemy. These are our 2 heroes in every company. What are the others doing? Marshall's research says they'd run ammunition, they'd resupply, they'd find ammo, they'd do whatever you want to.
But these guys, they're not being cowards. They're not running away. Yeah. They're still on the battlefield.
Yeah. You know, they're calling for help, they're directing fire, they're running ammunition.
So in a way, they are
weapons.
getting shot at themselves.
Yeah. And they're making a contribution.
But they just know that they're going to be no good at killing.
They're not doing it.
His arguments may be persuasive, but there's one thing Lieutenant Colonel Grossman can't talk his way round. And that's the millions of dead from World War II. He maintains that the vast majority of victims were killed by air bombardment, artillery and crew-served weapons like tanks and machine guns. But if the troops operating these managed to avoid feeling a deep, innate resistance to killing, why couldn't the infantry do the same? To answer this, we need to go back to Russia in 1941. This is footage of Heinrich Himmler, architect of the Holocaust. He's on a trip to the newly captured city of Minsk to check on the progress of his death squads. By all accounts, he was in a jolly mood, joking with officers as he drove up in his staff car to witness a routine execution of captured Jews. But within moments of seeing the first man shot in the head, Himmler had to be led away feeling nauseated. It would be hard to imagine anyone with less feeling for his victims. He would, after all, sign away the lives of 6 million. But as he discovered, there's a big difference when you have to see death with your own eyes. And this is something every soldier in close combat has to deal with.
You see people's expressions on their faces. You hear them crying and pleading. You know, there's nothing worse to have to kill someone that's pleading to live. Even though they might be speaking a language you don't understand, you do understand things like mother, And you do understand when a man is scared stiff, looking at you, just the eyes, without language, will tell you that he's had enough, he doesn't want to die, he's scared, please don't kill me. You can see that in people's faces when you're that close and you're close enough to and have to kill them from that distance. That is what grips a man.
One can see this problem with the intimacy of killing in this film of Chinese soldiers being ordered to execute prisoners. A bullet in the back of the head is easier to administer than a shot between the eyes, for one important reason.
The face and the eyes are the mirror to the soul. And we're actually looking in the soul of another human being and killing them. And that's difficult. We don't realize how much a frightened human being actually has signs. Vasoconstriction begins to set in. The body shuts down the blood flow to the outer layer of the body. The face goes white blotches around the eyes and around the nose. The eyes go wide open. You see the terror response, and you know, this is a frightened human being. He is scared of me.
And of course, this horror of seeing into a victim's eyes is familiar to us from peacetime as well as war. In an execution, the blindfold is for the benefit of the hangman, not the condemned.
By now I realised that no training exercise, however realistic, was going to give me a total insight into what men really go through in battle.
But luckily, I didn't have to experience the blood and the carnage for myself, because about the same time that General Marshall was compiling his report back in 1947, two American psychiatrists called Swank and Marchand were gathering some even more explosive data. They were trying to measure the effects that the horrors of modern war had on servicemen.
Swank and Marchand looked at the response of soldiers after 60 days of continuous day and night combat on the beaches in Normandy. Ordinarily, we can give a soldier a break. They don't have to do 60 days of continuous day and night combat. Usually we can rotate them out. But in the beaches in Normandy, there was no rear lines. You were in constant mortal danger 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end. Swank and Marchand say that at the end of 60 days, if those boys couldn't get a break, 98% were psychiatric casualties. Well, about the other 2%? Well, they were sociopaths. Yeah. They were having a good time. So there's something about combat that drives 98% of men insane, and the other 2% were crazy when they got there.
Could it really be a coincidence that the figures dovetailed so perfectly? The 98% of GIs who Marshall found were unwilling to kill, and the 98% who Swank and Marchand found succumbed to the stress of battle. Were the people we think of as heroes actually criminally insane? I'd begun my journey wondering, could I be a soldier? Now it seems I was asking the wrong question. I should have asked, am I a sociopath? I'd begun this inquiry by wondering if I had the right stuff to be a war hero, like my boyhood idol, Captain Hurricane. But a 1947 study by two American psychiatrists suggested that most heroes aren't normal. In fact, psychopathic was the word they used. So where does that leave my beloved Spitfire pilots, or the gallant men of Rorke's Drift who held off 4,000 Zulus, or indeed my personal favourite, a true superhero and the only man to win a VC on D-Day, Stan Hollis?
In June 1944, Stan Hollis, a colour sergeant major with the Green Howards Battalion, climbed off the side of a Royal Navy troopship and got into a landing craft just like this one. His regiment had been ordered to attack the heavily defended beaches of Nazi-occupied France. As Stan and the rest of D Company advanced inland, they came under heavy machine gun fire. Hollis sprang up and charged 30 yards towards the nearest German pillbox, spraying it with his Sten gun as he went. He got to the slit, stuck in his barrel and hosed down the interior, then climbed on top and dropped in a grenade to finish off the survivors. Not satisfied, he then advanced towards the next pillbox in line, whereupon 25 terrified Germans promptly surrendered.
Now, I really can't believe that Stan Hollis and the like were all psychopaths. And to be fair to the boffins, they're not saying that all heroes are like Hannibal Lecter. It's just that their brains are wired in such a way that lets them cope with killing, day after day after day.
You know, I knew this guy, you know, in peacetime as well as in action, and the guy was a great friend of mine, and as nice a man you could ever wish to meet. Everybody would say, "What a charming, nice fella that is," and I would often think to myself, yeah, you don't really know